did not walk through my parents' living room. I did cartwheels.
And a good village gymnast.
And then I went into my bedroom and cried. It wasn't that I had a rough childhood, I just felt everything more deeply than anybody else. It was Oklahoma in the 70s. We lived in the suburbs, at the end of a cul-de-sac where deep conversations go to die. Emotions were discouraged. And talking about feelings was, as my mom would put it, well, I just don't need to do that. I did need to do that. I was a skinny girl with a pixie haircut. I was a daydreamer and a poet. And I would cry at cartoons. I would cry at sunsets. I would cry when my sister sat on me and pinned my arms to the ground. But fortunately, I had Dad. Dad would knock on my bedroom door, peek his head in, and come in and comfort me. He would make me laugh no matter how much I wanted to cry. It would be like, oh. And we had our own special language. He used to call me Goober, which was a big compliment. And if he was really proud of me, he would call me Goober Duckus. That's what you want to hear. My uncle, I said to Dad that I am never going to get married unless I can find somebody exactly like you. And we agreed that that was impossible. By the time I reached high school, his older brother, Uncle Buddy, told me at a drunken family event, you know, you're the favorite. And I kind of knew that, but I wanted to keep it on down low because I don't want my sister to sit on me again. So, I grew up. And I moved. I did something that Dad would never do. I moved to New York City. I quit my lucrative corporate job, and I became an actor. Because that's where they need people who can cry. One summer evening in 2003, Dad called and asked me what I had been doing that day. And I said, oh, well, I just walked in the Peace March. And he hung up on me. Yeah, that had never happened before. I was shocked, but I was not surprised. It was Oklahoma. My dad was sitting in his recliner. He had retired, and all he was doing now was watching Fox News. A staunch Republican. And I'm holding the phone, and I'm so shocked, and I want to call him back and just say, you know, Dad, I actually didn't really walk in the Peace March. I actually went to go get a slice of pizza, and the Peace March was next to the pizza shop, and I was just eating my slice as I walked. I thought, oh, I'm just walking the march. It was like a pizza march, not actually a pizza march. And that was actually true, because I wasn't very political. But when I thought about it, as I'm holding the phone trying to figure out what to do, I think, what is wrong with walking in a Peace March? But the bond that Dad and I had disappeared. And I wasn't sure if I could get it back. Now, by now, my sister is a staunch Republican. Before, she was the rebel, and I was the good girl, and now I'm the rebel, and she's the good girl. And that same year, my dad tells me, well, I've decided, you know, your sister's going to be the power of attorney and the executor and the power of everything, and I'm kind of crushed. But I gotta be me, but I think, well, okay, I'll just keep trying to get it back. Maybe I can get this Goober thing back again, you know? I'm charming, I'm still charming. So I would go to visit, I would visit Oklahoma frequently, and Dad would be sitting in his recliner. opening peanut shells, throwing them into the grocery bag, and watching Fox News. And I couldn't hold myself back. I was like, Dad, they're brainwashing you. Why are you're too smart for this? I didn't say that, but I said, I tried to say it in a nice way. I don't know how to say it in a nice way, but I tried. And things just couldn't get better. I just started going to my room quietly and spending less time in the living room. One particular visit, however, he was making pancakes, and he was putting blueberries into the pancakes. And he mentioned that my sister actually, whenever she had got the blueberries, she would wash them all at the same time, which he said was a terrible thing because that makes them spoil much sooner. And I thought, well, that's a win. I don't do that, Dad. I wash the blueberries one at a time, Dad, and I will continue to do that. So I'm trying to find this compromise between being me and finding our closeness. And I'm really looking forward to Thanksgiving of 2018 because my brother and sister are not going to be there. So I'll have full-on charm, no competition with the Republicans, just me. And I can't wait, right? And at this point, my parents have moved into assisted living, and I stay at the house, which is very close to that, and we have a lovely dinner. And that morning, early the next morning, my mom calls at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, Dad's breathing is bad again. You gotta come over here. And I go to their apartment, and I rush Dad to the ER. And he spends the next few days in ICU. But he gets better. And they send him to the room, the floor, that's the 4th floor, which is supposed to be the you're getting out of here soon floor, so we're optimistic. And I'm sitting with him, I'm sitting next to his hospital bed, and he's falling asleep in the middle of a sentence. And this is not right. I'm not buying this get out of here soon thing. So I run and find a nurse, and I bring her in here, and she measures his breathing, and she's like, she gasps herself, and they rush him back to ICU. And now I'm sitting late at night in the waiting room, surrounded by all these families, these different sectionals, and I'm sitting there in this solo chair, and I think, okay, this is my job now. I can do this. I can do this for Dad. I can do this for the family. And my job is to keep Dad from suffering, to comfort Mom, and to text my brother and sister updates on all the medical stuff, which is not easy to do. But he does get better. And so my sister and brother, they come into town. I fly back to New York to catch up on some stuff, and we sort of do a tag team. And my sister calls me at one point and says, Dad is staring at the clock in his room, and he's saying, tick tock, when do you think it's going to happen? And I actually think that's kind of funny, because Dad and I, one of the things we shared was a dark sense of humor. And I think, he probably wouldn't say that to me, because I would probably say, I don't know, Dad, when do you think it's going to happen? And my sister says, it's really cruel because he knows that this would upset me. And I'm like, yeah. And he wouldn't say it to me. He also tells her that he says that Gail wants to be here for the Big Bang. And I do. He's right. I want to be there for the Big Bang. But it's not happening yet. He's getting better. And so now I fly back, they go, I fly back into Oklahoma City to be there for when they're going to take Dad and send him to the rehab center because he's getting better. So Mom waits by the elevators, and I go into Dad's room while the paramedics come, and they're strapping him into this portable gurney thing. And his face contorts. And I say, Dad, do you want some pain meds? And he says, pain meds, and he passes out. And suddenly it's code red, and it feels like the entire hospital is now in my dad's room, and they're running around, and I'm like, this is my job now, my decision, as the doctor comes up to me and says, do you want us to give him CPR? And I don't know, that's not supposed to be my job, and there was supposed to be a DNR, but there isn't one, and I'm supposed to decide, and the doctor says, this could break his ribs, and I'm supposed to decide. And I say, I know that my brother and my sister want to be there, and I just don't feel like it's time. And so I say, give him CPR. And they do. And they send him back to ICU. And I'm praying that I made the right decision. And my brother and sister fly into town, and we're all there, sitting around, standing around his hospital bed when he wakes up the next morning, or when the doctor begins to wake him up. And I am just praying that I made the right decision and he doesn't wake up in pain. They take out the tube, he wakes up, and he smiles, and he laughs, and he makes jokes, and he winks at my mom repeatedly, and she says, "Oh, Jim." And it's the sweetest day and the most beautiful dad in his joyful, he's not grouchy, he's not in pain, it's just a beautiful, beautiful day. And they take him, later in the day, they take him to a hospice room. And I spend the first night there with Dad. And I want to have, the whole time he's been in the hospital, I keep wanting to have the conversation, to say, Dad, I love you, and can we get back on track, and I'm sorry that I kept bringing up the Fox News thing, and then I went to my room, and but I know that this isn't the time to say that, because this is he's on the way out, and this isn't about me, this is about him. So I think, well, okay, maybe the best thing to do right now is to circle back to childhood. And I say, okay, Dad, didn't you play a lot of sports when you were little? And he says, yeah, I played a lot of sports. And I said, you were really good, weren't you? And he's like, yeah, I was really good. And I said, what'd you play? He said, baseball. And I said, oh yeah. He said, I was in the outfield, I had a really good eye. And I'm like, yeah. Oh. And I said, okay, Dad, what was the name of your team? What was the name of your baseball team? And he says, Wildcats. And he falls asleep. And the next day, my sister spends the night, and he's still with us. And I asked the nurse, can he still hear us? Because he's not talking anymore. And she says, yeah, the last thing to go is hearing. And so my sister and I get on each side of his, well, actually, first she leaves the room, and I kneel next to him, and I think, okay, now I'm gonna have this conversation. And I feel kind of bad because I can't talk back now, but I want to say so many things. So I say, Dad, sorry about the Fox News thing. I really love you. And then I go, okay, keep it light. And I really love you, and you're a great dad, and I learned so much from you. And then my sister comes back, and then we stand on each side of his bed, each of us holding one of his arms, and we sing, when he lifts you up on eagle's wings. And then we go home to shower and return quickly. But when we get back, the nurse tells us that Dad had passed. And she takes me aside and tells me, this is one of the most peaceful departures I've ever seen from any patient. And I'm just so grateful that I could be part of I did make his life more difficult at the end, and I was confrontational, maybe when I shouldn't have been, as he was aging. But I did pull out some Gooberness at the end. And my sister tells me, once he's gone, that because I'm still sort of tortured by it, I'm still thinking maybe I shouldn't have been so stubborn, and maybe I shouldn't have, maybe I should have pretended to be a Republican. Maybe that's what I should have done. But my sister says, no, you actually showed him that he can love someone who has different beliefs than he does. Well, that's pretty good. But I'm still not satisfied. So I hear about a medium, and I decide I'm going to talk to Dad up there. And so I have this session with this medium, and the first thing I say to him to him through her is, so Dad, why did you pick Kay? Why did you give my sister Kay all the power of everything? I mean, I was your goober, and we're really close, and why'd you do that? And he said through her that it was easier. And I couldn't argue with that. I was not being easy. And then I said, well, Dad, why couldn't you respect my beliefs? Because I have my own beliefs. And he said through her, why didn't you respect mine? And I was like, oh. That's a good one. I have that. And that's definitely Dad. And one of the things I had wanted to ask him is, you know, now that you're in heaven, you know that Trump is wrong or bad. They don't have Fox News. I'm right? But he just brought up the thing about respecting his beliefs, so I gotta let that go. But I finally felt at peace. I finally felt at peace. And I realized I'm still single. And I realized I am not gonna find, and nor should I don't need to be with a man who's just like my dad, because he wouldn't be right for me. But I do know what my dad and I share is a strong will, sticking to our beliefs, and I know that love is not about agreement. Love is about respect. Thanks. Thomas,